All right, welcome everybody to ResV Systems. This is Coach Reslow. I actually am going to attempt to do my first interview with one of the legends, Ben Lynn. Ben's with us. Welcome, Ben. Yeah, man. I mean, this is my first interview. I think the idea of an interview series is going to be pretty awesome. So, I'm really stoked that I get to start off with you. But it's going to be choppy waters for a little bit till we find our stride. But welcome, man. How are we doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm used to being your guinea pig, so I mean, we'll figure it out as we go, I'm sure.
Well, that's going to be part of what we talk about. I mean, as I talked in the announcement, I mean, clearly you started out as a manager for me at Johnson and Wales, and then from there you carved your own niche into the volleyball landscape here in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So, I mean, I guess that is as good a place to start as any. Talk about your background in the volleyball world. Let's just jump right in.
So, I mean, I, like most people, had played volleyball in high school, just in a gym class, but it's obviously not similar in any way, shape, or form to what you see high school, club, college, whatever it might be.
Sure.
But I found myself going into my freshman year of high school thinking, all right, baseball is just not going to do it for me anymore. I might have more options later in life going to volleyball. So I decided to do that. Played for 4 years at my high school. I don't think I made varsity all 4 of those years. I probably stayed on JV all 4 years there.
Hmm.
But the coaches liked me and taught me a lot of things. But through all that, I was, told, everyone's got a chance to play in college. And I believe that to some degree, and I still do. But I get to your program my freshman year of college, and I'm looking around seeing he's 6'9", he's 6'8", he's 6'7". They're all built just way different than me. So I'm like, all right, well, I still want to stay in this sport. So I think I had come up to you after that first interest meeting and asked you, like, hey, I want to get involved with refereeing or something around here. Like, are you able to hook me up? Like, do you know anyone who I could talk to about that? And I think your first words were, well, do you want to be a manager? And I was like, well, I guess so. I'm certainly not going to play. So I'll just roll along with that. And now we're here.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
I
kind of the
remember that
short of it.
meeting. Yeah, I mean, I remember that meeting. We did that meeting, and well, actually, quick test of your memory. Was I in a suit or was I wearing just a normal polo?
That would have been one of your normal polo days.
Yeah, all right. So there was one preseason meeting that I showed up in a suit, and I remember thinking that one went really poorly. and then the and then the rest of them did very very well. Because I think by the time that you had entered Johnson and Wales, I was in the second half of my career. There was a little bit more confidence, a little bit more understanding of what it was going to take and what those types of meetings needed to be about. So I felt pretty good about it. And then I remember you coming up to me. I don't remember the referee part. I know you remember it very clearly, but I remember it more along the lines of, hey, I'm not going to play because I can see all these dudes around me and they don't look like I do. Can I be involved in some way? And I was like, dude, we need managers. Like, uh, for those that don't know, in the college world, especially at the Division 3 level, managers are huge. They make the world go round. Like you have your players, you have your assistant coaches, but more often than not, you as the head coach in a college Division 3 environment, you're a one man show or a one woman show. Like you're running everything at once. And so if you have any students that want to help out and help shoulder some of the responsibilities that just are, they're day to day, they can be very challenging, easy to forget if you're an idiot like me. And so, I've had 4 or 5 managers in my career at Johnson and Wales, and all of them were good in their different ways. But Ben, you were superior. You were you were outstanding, and actually, you became more of an assistant coach as your collegiate career went on. And it was a pretty cool thing. But I was always I remember, like I said, I remember the day pretty well, except for the refereeing part. And certainly the refereeing part became a big part of what you did for us in the practice gym. Like you were a manager,
Yeah.
but you also officiated all of our scrimmages.
Yeah. I mean, no, honestly, that had started off even earlier. I remember when the program still existed, we had to help out with the women's team.
Mm.
I think they had a big tournament one weekend or something, or relatively big. At the time, it seemed big because I was a freshman. They needed us to be, line judges, scorekeepers, whatever, basically a work team at the club level. And I was over on the side court with the teams that were just kind of there to get beaten or get the JWU women at the time warmed up a little bit.
Mm.
And I had done well enough, and you had emailed me the following day because you didn't have my number yet. We were still at that point in knowing each other. Hey, Nancy Samara apparently wants you on the main gym. Can you get a hold of my phone number so we can actually like do this easier? And I thought that was pretty interesting. Just I imagined that she was busy all day. I was like, there's no way she's looking over, watching what I'm doing just because. But I ended up staying, doing most of their games for the next 3 years. But I still remember the first time I told my parents, like, hey, the head coach asked me to be on the floor. And I told them jokingly, I'm like, yeah, they probably like, yeah, that short blonde kid, we want him. And my parents are, at the time, were naive to volleyball in a way. Like, a 5'10" in my hometown was tall. I mean, I played middle and opposite when I was in high school. So for me to be short for them was kind of a shocker. And then they started showing up to the men's volleyball games, and they saw how big some of these guys were, and like, okay, yeah, you're the short guy, and that's okay.
Well, Nancy was, I mean, first off, Nancy Samara, for those that don't know, she was the head coach of Johnson Wales for a while, basically about the same amount of time that I was there, and maybe a little less time in terms of years. I was there 12. I think she was there 8. Does that sound right? Maybe 9. But
Sounds about right.
she's one of the top coaches in the country at the time. She won, the GNAC over and over again. She really went really far into the NCAA tournament. She was the first women's volleyball team in Johnson Wales history to rank in the top 10 in the country. Like, she had turned that program into something fantastic. And one of the things that Nancy was always about, in my opinion, was that she liked competency and she liked people who did their job well. And that was for me, that made me work even harder because I wanted to make sure that she thought I did the same, that I had the same sort of work ethic, the same sort of attention to detail, the same sort of, strive for excellence. So it doesn't surprise me that, she'll just be watching the gym and she sees what's happening and she sees that you are snapping the flags. Well, that kid's got to be on the court. And it's like, yep, that's what needs to happen. And certainly that, I think you always had it in your head that you wanted to be a referee as well.
Yeah.
So, that's got to be some affirming information right there when one of the top college coaches in the country at the Division III levels, like, he needs to be on the floor for us.
For me at that time, I didn't have a lot of context. So it was just kind of, oh, cool, I get to see the more fun matches. Like, I'll be able to keep myself entertained a little bit longer because, I mean, you've officiated a bit, Reslow. You know there are some matches that it's just a slog to have to stand there in your official ready position and try to be somewhat entertained and do the things you're supposed to do, but you try to do it anyway just because you want to keep yourself in practice. But once I got more context, yeah, it meant a lot more. And as it progressed, obviously, I went and became an official for the NCAA and the Rhode Island Interscholastic League. I do lines for the NCAA, R1, R2, and lines when necessary for high school. I still remember my first match as a line judge. I drove down to Southern Connecticut State University, which is basically on that little itty bitty peninsula on the western side of the state. I drove probably close to 2 hours just to get there because that was the first opportunity I had gotten. I meet the R1 and the R2. They asked me if I've ever done it before. I looked at them like, well, this is the first time I'm getting paid. And they got scared, absolutely scared. I mean, I'm at a Division II school. It was a conference game. Like,
Right.
You're like, oh God, is this kid going to be a liability for us?
Yeah.
I go out. I think it was a 4-set match. No, 5-set. Went 5 sets. That one. My first match went 5 sets. And afterwards, that R1 had said to me, I wish I could bring you everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, you are so much more competent than a lot of the officials that I work with, or at the very least, like, you actually are doing the things that you need to do. And he asked me again, he said, this is your first game? I said, first one I got paid for.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
You didn't actually dive deeper into what my background was.
No. I have been doing lines since my junior year of high school. This is the first time I got paid for it.
Right. Well, let's go back to the college years quickly, and
Sure.
when you have a moment, think about it for a second. But tell me some of the pivot points in those college years that sort of pointed you in the direction in the officiating and certainly the coaching aspect going forward. What were some of the moments in that college career of yours that sort of got you on that trail?
Probably one of the first moments for me was during a practice. I think it was my sophomore year of college. I was sitting over on a chair. I think we had the scoreboard up on a box because we couldn't get one of the outlets open or something. So I'm in the middle of the floor with the scoreboard, keeping score for everyone. And just while I'm there, I'm not even really thinking super hard about being an official yet. After every point, I'm just going through the motions, net violation, double contact, whatever. Just small little things. And every now and then I'd look over at you and I can just see you nodding. And I'm like, I think he's looking at me, but that doesn't seem right. There's like 20 guys over on the floor doing things that are way cooler than what I'm doing. But I think it was that moment, probably for both of us, where you just handed me a whistle, Ben Lind, just referee, just do that.
Do your
And we'd
thing.
have an injured guy take care of the score, and that's kind of how I started.
Yeah.
Now, following that, to start actually getting money with it, I believe it was Coach Garapi. He had forwarded me an email that he had gotten from the Catholic Athletic League here in Rhode Island saying that they needed officials,
That's right.
primarily people who were fresh out of high school, in college, fresh out of college, who were just looking to get some level of experience in a low profile event. So I started doing those, thought I was pretty good at it, but hadn't actually read NFHS rulebook yet. That's the rules they use. So I was like, all right, well, I didn't seem too bad at this, so I'll give it a shot. And at some
And
point I had asked,
reading the rule book is overrated.
I'm not going to deny that. Once you've read one of them, you've probably got all of it.
But
Every
you got to
now
read
and
the
then
first one.
yeah, you got to read the first one. Then you got to find the highlighted parts of everyone after that.
That's right.
But then after that, I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll ask Res again. This was 2 years later at this point. I'm like, hey, do you know how to get in contact with someone in the Interscholastic League as to
See, that's the
who
one
I
I
can?
that's the one I remember, Ben. I
Yeah,
remember
that
that
was
one.
my
Yeah.
junior year. It was in your office, and I think you had contacted at the time Ray DeAngelis. So he reaches out to me. We get everything all set up, and I started officiating for the Interscholastic League. My first training match was at LaSalle Academy, and then my first real life match was at Classical High School.
There you go. Yeah, and I did not call Ray DeAngelis. I called Rick Rowie. I call Rick Rowie about
That makes
everything
sense.
in terms of officiating. If I'm going to get involved, I call Rick Rowie.
Well,
He's my
one way or
first.
another, Ray got a hold of my contact info.
Yeah, well, Ray was in charge at that point. He was the
Yeah.
head of the officials for the Rhode Island Interscholastic League, so he was the head of the officiating. And since then, it's been Joe Paterma was the guy after him, and then he was there for a couple of years. And now Steve Simmons is there, and Steve and I have a pretty good relationship, as you have a good relationship with him as well. So I
Yeah.
don't mind calling him straight out if I need anything.
Yeah.
But at that point, and still, I go to Rick first because he's one of my favorite guys, and he will absolutely be interviewed at some point for ResV as well. So,
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be a long one.
oh boy, Rick, man, when Rick and I get together, because a lot of people think I'm long-winded, and Garapi beats me, but Rick beats
Oh,
Garapi,
easily.
both of us together. So it's there's definitely going to be some minutes packed in on that one. So,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely. All right, so let's talk about refereeing a little bit, because that's one of the directions. Because you do have a coaching career as well now. You finished your first year with South County on the 18 threes, and I think you guys had a good year. I'm eager to hear your viewpoint on it, but let's talk refereeing first. So
All right.
now you're in the Rhode Island Interscholastic League. You've second year, third year now?
This started in 2019, so technically fourth year.
Fourth year, yeah, fourth. You've been
Yeah,
longer than I have. Yeah.
I'm borderline a veteran official considering what we've got around.
Well, I mean, I think the public wants to know, what are the three craziest moments you had as a referee for the Rhode Island Interscholastic League?
Three craziest moments. So first one probably has to be my first match ever. Like I said, Classical High School. Ray DeAngelis is training myself and one other official during a JV match. So Ray is sitting behind the scorer's table, just watching everything happen. He's helping the R2 a lot, and I'm up on the stand. Now I'm going through, I'm feeling pretty well. I'm nervous just because that's who I am, but I'm going through pretty well. And the whole time I can see Ray DeAngelis squawking at the guy, like, hey, you got to be over here. You got to be over here. This is what that signal is. So we get through the first set, and this guy I can see is pretty shaken up, which I understand. Being an R2, there's a lot of things that you have to do to have it be correct.
Ben, I prefer to be on the stand. Like, I don't like being an R2. I mean, I can do both relatively well, but I'll take on top of the stand any day of the week as opposed to the R2.
Yeah. So the first set ends, and Ray DeAngelis and this guy walk over to us, and I'm like, oh, cool. We're just gonna get like a little after set preview or whatever. Like, okay, this is what you did right. This is what you did wrong. I'm gonna switch sides. That was the plan. I was gonna be the R2. He was gonna be the R1, and we'll just go from there. Ray comes over to me. He's like, yeah. So the partner here just quit. He just did not enjoy this first set at all, and he's gonna go. And Ray told me he was gonna be the R2 for the rest of the match. So I'm just like, okay.
There
Now
you
this is my
go.
first match. I don't know if this is normal or not. I don't know if this is how training goes. So I just get back up on the stand. Ray becomes my R2 for the rest of the match, and that guy walked out of the gym.
That's
Haven't seen him
wild.
again.
That's wild. Dude, if that's the number one, what are 2 and 3? I can't wait.
Number 2 probably still has to be my first year officiating. I was doing the JV state championship. I believe it was at Coventry High School. No, this was at East Providence. This was the 9-10 tournament. So I don't remember what teams it was, but I remember at one point I'm going through the motions, doing everything. I'm up on the stand because I have to be. I swore I saw something out of the corner of my eye. Didn't see what it was, so I just keep going, just keep going. The rally is still going on during all this. The rally ends. I look down to where I thought I saw this just to make sure there wasn't, something on the floor that it needed to be removed or whatever. And the girl who is roughly in my line of vision freaks out. It's just jumping all over the place, swatting at herself. Turned out it was a bee, and it had landed on her.
Oh,
So
no.
she's all over the place trying to get this thing off of her and try to get it away from her. Now, of course, JV girls game, her entire team just abandons her. Like, just she's getting absolutely no help. Eventually the bee flies away, and we just go like we never like it never even happened. And I'm just up there like, should I have done something? Like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I didn't blow the whistle again for a serve, so I guess she wasn't not ready, but all right. That made sure she was okay. She seemed a little frazzled, but she was right back in the game, and I'm like, all right, let's go. So I blow the whistle back in, we're gonna go again. Third as an official probably has to be a game that I had recently. It was Block Island, and they were traveling to Juanita Sanchez in Providence. I get there, and I'm locked out of the gym. Like, all the doors are locked, every entrance. Now, I was there a couple of minutes later than I would have liked to be, but not very long stretch of time by any measure for an official. So I'm standing there, probably 10 minutes trying to get my jersey in the little itty bitty window as much as I can, just to show that, like, hey, I'm here to do my job.
Open the door.
And I'm surrounded by kids, so my first instinct was like, all right, maybe I can just like blow my whistle super loud, maybe they'll see me. But I'm like, no, I'm in like a little alcove surrounded by kids. I can't just go, everybody close your ears. Like, that's not gonna fly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
eventually I wait, knock on it every now and then. Coach finally comes over, lets me in. Now I'm getting all set up, and I find out I have to work this match alone. I'm like, okay, well, at least it's good money. Like, that's the saving grace there. But I got to go up on the stand, work this match. So as I'm working through the match, it ended up going 5, which really was just frustrating. And a long 5 at that. I think I was there for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Third set, I have a girl on my left just all over the line on service, at least as best as I could tell. My line judges weren't helping me at all because it's high school, it just happens.
Sometimes.
So
yeah.
I blow it dead. Points have gone by. Everyone's just kind of okay with it. There wasn't much of an argument. The timeout is eventually called, and a fan comes out of the stands, looks up at me and says, I have video. She didn't step on the line, and turns their phone and points it at me. And I'm just like, I've already made my decision. I can't go that far back and change it, even if I am wrong.
Right.
And they're just like, oh, okay. And walked back into the stands. I'm like, you're that adamant and you didn't even fight it a little bit more? Like, I appreciate you walking away, but man, like, and that wasn't even the first thing in that match. And come later on, I have to get the coach involved, get a bunch of fans to stop doing their particular behavior that was not necessarily appropriate for a girls' match.
Oh boy, yeah.
And then I move into a 5th set that's just highly contentious. And within the first few points, the book is calling me over because they think that someone's out of rotation. And I'm like, oh. So all the way down off the stand, all the way across the court. What's going on? All right, guys, I've been tracking it as best as I could. We're still early on. I looked at the little lineup sheet because we weren't even to the point where I really needed to look at the book. I'm like,
yeah.
Look, they scored 3 points. They've rotated 3 times. This is the 3rd server. Like, they should be right. I appreciate that you guys are trying. I really do. Like some of the only kids have actually had tell me that there's the wrong server, but I'm like, all right, I'm sorry, you're wrong. The other coach is going ballistic, and I tell him, I'm like, look, I get that you think they're trying to cheat or whatever, but you don't have someone on the table doing book with them. Like there's no backup.
Right. There's
You
no
can't
second
prove that
book.
they're wrong. You're
Yeah.
just telling me based on the scribbles on your paper.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's why you need to have two sets of books. So you have a backup, number one. And then number two, for those of you parents and fans out there, if the referee on the stand has to get down and walk over, something really bad has happened. You never want to see a referee that's on the O1, the R1 that's on the stand get down and walk all the way across, because that means something's majorly messed up and it's going to take some time. And it's one of the things that we try to avoid, right? We don't want
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
have the slowdown of a game. The goal is to not be seen at all. The game to go fast and quick. Not quick. I mean, we're not trying to get out of there, but we try to be as precise as possible. And we don't want to have unnecessary delays that cause the game to wind down into a crawl. And certainly, when you have delays, that's where motions and weird stuff happens. Like,
Yeah.
just keep playing
Yeah. I mean,
volleyballs.
to your point, I can only think of two instances where I've actually come down off the stand and walked all the way across the court. The one that I just mentioned being the first time, and the second time being having to actually break up a altercation between two coaches. They had
Oh my
gotten way too close at the table, basically over a disagreement on how to write the lineup down.
Oh my
Not
gosh.
even on like how it got entered into the book, but literally the order in which you write the numbers down. And these coaches are absolutely screaming at each other. So I come down off the stand, I'm all the way across the court, to the point where I had to like kind of herd, not necessarily push, but herd both coaches to each side of their 10-foot line to get them to calm down. And I'd explain to them, you're kind of right. Here's why he's confused. Go to the other one. You're kind of right. Here's why he's confused.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, those are three or four stories that
Yeah.
they kind of top mine. I mean, I have a couple, but the one that I like the most is the one where I had to go into the stands in Tollgate. That was that was my, two of my stories are at Tollgate High School. The first one where it's my first match ever. I show up, this is during the COVID era, so we have to wear masks, and I had to do it by myself. This is my first match ever, and I'm doing it by myself. Now I'm pretty confident. I was a college coach, so I know a lot about the game. But the intricacies of the high school game, there's some things that are different than college, and certainly,
Absolutely.
I show up and they're like, yeah, we're this is what we're doing. This is what the time is. And I was like, well, how much warm up time do you guys get? Like 5, 5, and 5? And they're like, no, no. I was like, oh, I'm already out the gate. And I remember, Rick Rowe, who pointed me in the right direction there, was like, hey, it's COVID. It's going to be two teams. There's going to be no people in the stands. No one's, they're just going to be happy to play. So you just do your thing. You'll be fine. So I roll in there, and before I even turn, the stands are packed to the gills with people, and I'm like, "This is ridiculous. This is not what I was told was going to happen." And then later on, a year later, fans were unruly, and there was no site supervisor, and one team's freaking out, and both coaches want to do nothing about it, and I basically have to say, "Hey, I'm not supposed to do this because we're not as officials. We're
No, we're
not supposed
not.
to go in the stands at all."
No.
But someone had to take control of the situation. I was like, listen, if you guys are both cool with this, I'll go talk to these people and get it sorted. But I want to make it crystal clear that this is not my first choice. This is not what I want to do, but I will do it because no one else will. And they're like,
Yep.
yes, please. And so I went in the stands and yelled at some kids. And I didn't really yell. I said the lamest thing possible. Now I'm in charge. It's so lame.
Well, it's not
But
as
they
lame when you're
listened to
six
me
foot
and they're like, all
six.
right, yeah. You know, and I remember turning after I gave my little speech about, some parent got on my face, nose to nose. What does this mean? I said, well, you can't say horrible things, you can't swear, you can't say anything sexual, and you can't be a jerk. He's like, yep, okay. He turned around and sat down. I was like, all right, great, let's finish this match. And the worst part is that the team that Tollgate was playing was pretty good, and all they had to do was win. Like they didn't need this headache, and instead they made it a headache, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's move on, man. All right, so we
All
talked
right.
about high school. Give me some cool moments as a line judge. Give me some matches that were awesome for you.
All right. I think probably one of the first ones was before I was really truly an official. It was while I was still at Johnson and Wales University.
Hmm.
I had worked the match between the Johnson and Wales women's team and the Coast Guard women's team, and I think that went like 4. It was a pretty solid match. I thought I had a pretty good day. And this ended up being another one of those instances where it's like, hey, maybe I should do this. I remember the R1 getting down off the stand, doing whatever they have to do afterwards at the table. He turned and looked at me. He's like, you're pretty good at this. And then wrote down all his contact info on a piece of paper, handed it to me because he wanted me to go and continue on doing what I was doing. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, I really liked it. I don't remember who the official was at this point anymore, but I enjoyed that someone recognized it, especially an official at that.
Right.
And then I remember walking outside, one of my friends happened to be working the desk of the Wildcat Center at the time. He's like, how'd it go? I was like, I put on a clinic. He just laughed at me, gave me a hug over the desk. He's like, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that was a fun one. Just a really good match as well. Like the one that I think really did it in that match for both of the officials, one of the Coast Guard girls had gone up for an attack on the left side, Set pushed her out a bit. She takes a swing, ball just barely nicks the antenna. I think I'm the only person in the building that actually had an angle on it to see it.
Mm.
But when she jumped more sideways away from everything than through and like into the net. So she lands and she hit the ref stand. She knocked him off balance. He starts rotating around the pole. He's got no ability to make any sort of call. So I'm standing on the corner for probably solid 10, 20 seconds making my call while the R1 is trying to get his feet, which is really hard when your feet aren't on the ground. Eventually, the R2 looks over, sees it, blows it dead, and everything just works out. I mean, at the time, the JU women's team was right behind me. They all know who I am at that point, and I'm getting lauds and plaudits from behind me, and I'm like, I get it. You can't do that right now, but I get it. Like, cool. I'm just smiling, but I can't turn around. Like,
I tell you, one of my favorite matches, because you and I have worked together. I loved that Bryant match. That Bryant match we did was a lot of fun.
It was, yeah.
Who were they playing?
URI.
No, Bryant. No, Bryant was playing somebody else. They were playing. We were at Bryant.
Yeah, I thought it was URI. I thought it was Rhodey.
No, they were playing an in-conference team. Remember?
Oh yeah.
It was a great match. Like, that was a fun match. That was like, it was, because we had done a lot of URI matches together.
Yeah, we have done a lot of those.
But they're, the URI team right now is in a rebuilding mode. It's not, they're not built for speed. They're not built to win right now. But that Bryan team is right in the thick of their conference. Like, they're doing a lot of good things. They're first or second, and they were playing a conference opponent. And I want to say Albany. I want to say it was
sounds right.
Somebody from New York.
That sounds right.
And I believe, if I recall, Bryant won in 3, but it was a tough, nasty 3. Like, it wasn't a walkover.
They didn't skate through it at all. Of course, my biggest memory from that match is like there was a sniper out to get you. Yeah. I think there was probably 3 or 4 balls that went your way. It was even one that hit the ceiling and came straight down at you. Like, that's right. You couldn't win for losing.
Well, when you're 6'6" and heavy, like, you're a pretty big target. But I just remember that match being really, you're right, I did get hit a lot, but I remember that match being just really a fun grinder match. And like, I think the top official was Ted Tracy.
It's Teddy. Yep, it's Ted Tracy.
And I forget who the bottom official was, and forgive me. He's actually, he and I have gone head to head a couple of times when I was at Johnson and Wales, and now he's a buddy. Which is funny because, you think somebody's a certain way, and then you meet them on their terms in a different environment. It's a totally different ball game. But it was so anyway, I think it was a solid crew of officials, and we're in a real good match.
Absolutely.
And we're really professional, and we're really just making the calls we're supposed to make. And it was just one of those times where there really wasn't any controversy. It was just good volleyball. Especially for the region, for New England region, that's pretty much as good as it can get right now.
I think it was even said in our after-match meeting in the locker room, like, we didn't need to be there.
Yeah.
Like, that match would have gone exactly the same had we not been there.
Yeah, but that was a great match. I remember that one. I really liking that one a lot. So that was cool. Oh boy, my dogs are running around upstairs. And I hope the microphone's not picking it up, but they're probably
not that I can hear.
Anywho. All right, so let's move to the coaching world. So now you're a coach, you finished your first year, and I have such an open-ended question for you. You're going to love it.
Oh boy.
What is your brand of volleyball, man? You know, as a coach now, what kind of brand of volleyball are you teaching?
Uh, Honestly, at this point, I think it's a brand of necessity. Now, I don't have I didn't have people like you did, right? I mean,
Right.
I had some relatively big players, but a lot of my guys were small, scrappy, so I had to be more on the defensive end, and I had to really focus on the things that we could control, largely being serving. I mean, there are nothing in the sport can stop you from serving well with enough practice.
Mm,
People can't block your serve, they can't get in your face. Like there are some things that the crowd might be able to do, but it's not consistent. If you're attacking, you can be blocked. If you're blocking, you can be hit over.
mm,
There's lots of things that can change. Serving is one of those things that you need to control if you're on the smaller side.
mm,
Now, that being said, even my small guys jump pretty well. I thoroughly appreciated that, but we had to be scrappy with some of the opponents that we played. And I think it really showed a lot at the tournament that we had at Mohegan. And
mm.
we went 1-4, but four of our matches went to 3 sets. One of our matches went in two, but first one I think was 25-17, second one ended 27-25. We were not giving anyone an easy win.
Okay.
Everyone was coming away tired.
Mhm.
I think we had that Northeast 18-2 team right off the bat, first thing in the morning,
Oof.
and they beat us in three. Just a hard fought three, just over and over and over again, doing whatever we could to scrape together a point, score on them. Like one of my kids managed to get a kill with his head, I think. Swung into the block came back, hit him in the head, went right over the block and onto the floor. Like,
Yeah.
however,
Yeah.
it's got to work.
Necessity, a brand of volleyball. I like it.
Yeah, it's a brand of necessity. Like,
That's
what do
right.
we need to do to score? All right, well, we need to serve well and we need to play defense.
Well, quite frankly, that's what everyone's brand of volleyball is. I mean, you got to score points and you got to claw it out, especially when you're playing teams that are tough. What's you know, the kids seem to like playing for you this year, and certainly, you know, this is your first year as the head coach of a program. You know, you've been borderline assistant with me for a long time, but yeah, I mean, did you get a different feel and a different enjoyment from the coaching side than you did from refereeing or being a lines person for the NCAA?
I did. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think a lot of that had to do with I just had a really good group of kids this season.
Mhm.
Like now, we have yet to have a season where we're really like, oh, this guy was just a bear to deal with. Like we've said multiple times, like all these kids are good kids.
Yeah.
There are days where just coaching in general isn't just it doesn't feel good.
Mm,
But then there are other days where it's like, yeah, this is what I want to do right now. This is how I'm hoping to continue on. I hope that everything just keeps going better.
mm.
I mean, yeah,
The vibe of coaching, man. I mean, some days are terrible. I mean, it's like life. Some days are terrible, some days are wonderful. And you know, when it goes right and it goes well and like a kid gets it or your team excels and does more than it should or it wins something it's not supposed to, or you know, on my end with the 18 ones, you know, we were trying to break through and win a major. Like that was the
yep.
whole point, because we hadn't won one yet. It's been 3 years, and we finally broke through at Mohegan, and that was pretty cool. But yeah, that's why you get addicted to the job, because when things
Yeah.
go well, it feels great. When things go poorly, though, whew, it can be it can be rough. It
Yeah.
can
I
be
think a
rough.
large goal for my team this year was to try and do better than that level team did the prior year.
Mm,
Like
yeah,
it was for a couple of those guys, it was just about growth. I had a couple of people who had returned onto that team, but for a lot of them, it was just, all right, we seem pretty good. Other clubs, maybe we would have played higher, but this is where we're at right now. Everyone became friends really quickly, at least it seemed from what I could tell.
mm,
And we were able to compete at a high level relative to our level, you know?
yeah.
I mean, at, as I'm sure you remember, because I won't let you forget, at Nerva 2, we almost took you down in that semifinal match. I mean, all we were trying to do was score more than the 18-2s did, but we managed to score 22 points on you. And my guys were very, very excited about that. And I think we really rode that high for probably 50 to 60% of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you served us tough, and you got us in a couple of binds where we couldn't get out of it well, and we made a bunch of errors, and you know, that's how you beat a team that's better than you are, you know, on paper anyway. The idea
Yeah.
is to frustrate them enough and get them making errors, get them questioning what they're doing, and you know, my brand of volleyball, a lot of it has to do with preparation and being precise in what you're doing offensively and being big in the blocking category. And but then one of the other things I like to do is serve specifically so that they're uncomfortable. And it's worked quite well. And that's what you guys did to us. You served us uncomfortable, and we were just like, oh,
Yeah.
now we
I
got
mean,
this
like I've
should be
said,
easy.
like I
Wow.
said to you all season long, bring him down to your level and beat him with experience. Like if the game is going exactly how you want it to go, you know what the end of it is. If
Well,
you're not doing what you're comfortable with, it's not going to go how you want it to go.
that's the first quote. What's the second quote that you gave me this year? First
Uh,
quote.
you can't control how good of a day you're going to have, but you can control how weird of a day someone else will have.
I like both of them. I like both of them. I used them both in some timeouts and some pre and post game
I mean, I
speeches
used
to
it
my
so
team.
frequently I had to walk away from a timeout one time to fix the camera. I come back and my kids are quoting me. Like everything I could have possibly wanted to say during that timeout, they had already said in that huddle without me being there. I was
Well,
like, all right, let's get it, boys.
that means you made an impact. If they're remembering things you're talking about, that's the whole ball of wax. That's really great. So let's see. I got another couple of questions here. What is
Sure.
one thing that you think every coach should know that they probably don't know?
The names of positions in this country. And what I mean by that is there is a large growing infatuation with a particular anime or Japanese cartoon, whatever you want to refer to it as, called Haikuyu, which I believe more often than not will refer to hitters as wingers, which in portions of the world is correct. But in this country, you might either confuse the people you're talking to or just sound strange. Now, me being me, I know what they're talking about, but there are instances where it's like, hey, you kind of need to talk the same language, so to speak. I mean, everyone in volleyball who's been around it long enough knows the signals, they can talk in that way. But if you're talking to a wide group of people, especially people who don't have a lot of experience, maybe just a little bit, but not a lot of experience, need to have some level of consistency in order to understand
Mm,
what you're talking about day to day.
mm,
And if one day you're an outside hitter and one day you're a winger, it becomes confusing rapidly,
sure,
even though the job is exactly the same. And
sure.
there doesn't need to be any more confusion with volleyball. We have, what, 45 pages worth of rules about what a libero is and what they can do. And most parents, all they know is that's the dude with the different colored shirt. Like, I
Well,
guess
that's
it
gonna
means they're the away team today.
that's what's gonna lead me into my next question for you, which is, again, putting on your officials hat. What's one rule that you think every parent or coach needs to know that maybe they don't?
Needs to know is probably double contacts and how they're called and how
Yeah,
it's kind of like a strike zone in baseball.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
as much as it sucks, strike zones and doubles are subjective. They're judgment calls and they're based on context. They're like, if a ball lands inbounds in volleyball, it's inbounds. Now, if you get it wrong, you get it wrong, but it's subjectively wrong or right. If a ball is doubled in volleyball, you have the context of the level that you're at, the other things that have happened the rest of the day, the situation that you're in. There are so many things that go into that call that might cause an official to blow their whistle or to not blow their whistle, again, based on everything that's gone on around them. And that's the thing that gets the most parents riled up, because there are some instances where they may not necessarily be able to see what we can see. Now, I might draw a line, a poor line at that, but if I allow a lot of spin on a ball, which would typically be a double, I'll say, okay, that's fine. But then there are instances where a ball might come out with absolutely no spin, but from my angle, I can see that it hit one of their hands and the hand hit the other one. That's a double. Even if it comes out with no spin at all, it's 1-2.
Mhm.
Two contacts. That's a double. And
Okay.
I've gotten yelled at from the stands for stuff like that before, because from my angle, I'm like, oh yeah, you both hands, different times. Like
Yeah. Well,
in
generally, the
terms
ball should show that. I mean, the ball. I mean, one of the
should,
reasons
yeah.
that for less experienced referees, where you sort of talking about the spin of the ball, and a lot of that has to do with the tightness of of and the how they used to call it back in the day. Back in the
Yeah.
day, the ball had to be as clean as possible, or it was an automatic double or an automatic violation. But in today's world, it's very rare that you know it's very rare that the ball doesn't showcase that. If it
Yeah.
hits two hands and then comes out clean, that's really hard to do. But it's
Now
interesting. You
that
think,
being said, there
yeah,
are instances, especially in high school, where even if the ball does present, I'll say a double contact, you can't see it. Some high schools cannot afford multicolored balls, which is how you see that spin. So if you're playing with a ball that's all one color and some light branding, if any, officials might miss the most obvious call in the world with a ball that might have been a different color.
I like that you brought up context because I think that matters too. There's so many times where coaches and parents in the stands and fans in the stands, they're demanding a tighter level of officiating, and you kind of you don't say it as an official, but you're thinking to yourself, listen, if I tighten this up and call it as tight as you think you want me to, like, we're not playing volleyball. Like,
We're
like this.
we're playing serve the ball and catch it. That's
Yeah,
that's
so I
the
mean,
brand of volleyball that we're gonna have.
context matters. Now, if you're a Division 1 top tier program for college, yeah, you better be pretty darn good, and
Absolutely.
you're gonna be very, very, as an official, you're gonna be very, very tight on everything, because the expectation is that these teams are the best of the best in the country. But if you're at, a Division 2 high school situation where both setters are, in the process of learning the game, like, do we really want to be in a situation where we're calling hands on them over and over again? Number one, it's not fun to watch. Number two, the kid feels terrible. I mean, the kid's trying to make a play, and
Yeah,
like everything he
absolutely.
touches or she touches, it could be, you just don't want to do that to a kid. So, as an official, you're trying to do the right thing, and you're trying to, like you said, set your line about what's going to be too egregious and what's going to be okay, and try to follow it. But a lot of times coaches and parents don't recognize that, and all they see
Yeah.
is, well, why are you making that call? Why not this call, this and that?
And I mean, to some degree, there is the level of, I know why you're making that call, but I still need to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind coaches going, "Hey, why?" And it's like, "Well, okay, I'll tell you
Yeah, I
why
mean,
if you want."
I,
But
I even had an instance of this while I was coaching this season. We two of my players had collided and tried to contact a third ball to get it over the net. It ended up being set points. The official walks over and I'm like, look, I'm well aware that we lost that point, but you called it a double and the ball came out really clean.
yeah.
He's like, all right, so both of your guys were facing me. I could see your setter's hands. Like I just said, offset, hit one hand, dropped down to the other, and got pushed out. And I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. I just wanted to know what you see, what you saw that I couldn't, or give an idea of what I can tell my kids.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times too, officials make mistakes in terms of what the call is. There's a violation there, but you make the wrong call. Like,
Yeah.
for example, the one that's been most tied around my neck is when it was, I'm at Cherahoe High School, and they're playing North Kingstown, and there's a rally that goes back and forth, and one of the North Kingstown middles sets it over terribly on on the first contact, and
Yep.
I call a double. And in reality, it's not a double. I mean, first contact, you can maul the ball. What I should have
Yeah.
called was some sort of, the displeases me sign,
Yeah.
some sort of a
A
carry,
lift
just,
or an illegal
yeah,
contact or
illegal
something to that
contact,
effect.
which is the right call. But I made the wrong call. And of course, NK goes through the roof, and it's like, dude, okay, maybe I'm incorrect on the actual call, but it was still a violation in my opinion. And
Yeah.
the best part was it didn't affect the match at all. And that's what you're really hoping for as an official, is not to make an error that affects the match. Like,
Yeah.
they were up by 7, 8, 9 points at the time, so it wasn't going to be too much of an issue. But the
I
goal
mean,
is to be as
even
good as
as an
possible.
even as an official, you don't want to make a call that's correct that affects the match. I mean, I've been there as well. Like that, and that can get worse in all honesty. I've told you this story before, but more recently it was a girls' semifinal match. We had an issue with the book right at set point that would have brought us to 5. Long story short, we had to bring all the girls back out because there was an incorrect server. So we're
Oh, yeah.
all of a sudden
I
back
remember
into
that.
set 4, tied at 24, when everyone in the gym 10 minutes ago thought it had ended 25-23. We were going to set 5.
Yeah, you and
As
I had
far
a
as the
phone.
book was concerned, yeah,
Yeah,
we did.
we had a
You,
phone
you,
conversation about that, and it's funny because that's like the perfect, weird scenario. It's kind of like the Star Trek scenario where, you're in the no win dead situation
Yep.
that Shatner, cheated to win. I forget what it's called. I'm not a Trek guy, but I remember that particular storyline in a couple of movies and in some of the shows as well. But it's the perfect scenario where it's like what's the right thing, legally on the rules is going to cause way more mayhem than actually letting it go because the time has passed. Like there's not enough time to, you already missed it. Like,
Yeah.
how many calls can you go back to that you've missed, for an hour? Like if I missed a huge hands violation call at 24:23, but but four rallies have happened since then. I can't go back. I
Yeah,
can't
exactly.
go back. So, even though it was the right thing to in terms of the scorebook to bring those players back, my opinion was, geez, I mean, at some point the statute of limitations on time comes into play here. You can't just bring everyone back when like you said, 5-10 minutes ago they thought the set was over.
Yeah.
So that
I
was a
mean,
strange one.
to the point of the story, I believe the decision had come relatively quickly. A lot of that time that was spent was largely trying to get the coaches to understand this is what's going to happen and trying to articulate it to them as best that they could. Now, yes, one of the coaches was going to be absolutely frustrated, and they were,
Mhm.
but we had made the call relatively quickly. Now, still a few minutes because we had to look at the book, but it wasn't the 10 or 15 minute, it wasn't the entire time of the 10 or 15-minute delay. The call had been made relatively quickly, and the remainder of that time was getting everyone back out on the floor, getting the coaches to hopefully understand,
Getting,
do whatever. I mean,
getting everyone to believe in that situation.
yeah.
Like, how is this possible?
I mean, even to some degree, we didn't believe that it happened, but we're looking at everything that we had available to us, and we're like, yeah, this is the path that needs to happen. Like the server was incorrect. Both scorebooks had it that way. The call needed to be made at that point. It just any other point in the match would have been much better time for that.
Yeah. I remember that phone call, man. That was rough. I think you described it as everyone's unhappy. I'm leaving.
Yeah, I mean, and you weren't my first phone call that night. I mean, or at least you weren't my last. I had
Yeah.
other calls with the other officials that night, made sure they got home safe because it had become a
People are
dangerous
upset.
situation for the
Yeah,
officials.
people are
And
upset.
then I had gotten on the phone with Simmons because the game was under protest, and
Now what?
he,
Yeah.
yeah, he needed all the information from the officials at least as best as he could. So
That's a situation as official you don't want to be in if you can help it.
absolutely,
Uh,
but it happens, and
it
it's
does.
unfortunate, but it
It
happens.
does.
Like any official that doesn't think it will ever happen hasn't done it long enough,
Yeah.
or has just gotten out of a building so quickly after being so wrong that they've never noticed it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that there are times where you're part of a team, especially at the college level, certainly at the high school level, more often than not, you're part of a team of guys and gals running this match. And sometimes, somebody struggles, like somebody just is really having a bad day. And a lot of time, I mean, I've been in matches, and actually you've probably been in one with me as well, where
Yep.
the top official is just having a terrible day. Like he or she is just not in, and in like you're as the R2 or the line judge, you're like, yeah, I mean, I can't do anything about this.
I just got
You
to do
can,
my thing and
yeah, you can go in
def-
and give advice, but there are, between matches and sets, you can walk over and talk to the R1 and see how he or she is doing. But sometimes people just have bad days and there's not much you can do about it. You just try to do your job the best you can. And then, when it's time to leave, you do get out the door pretty
yeah.
quickly.
I mean, you have to. I mean, I think you've been to at least one of the clinics. Like that's what they teach you in the line judge clinics. It's like as soon as that match is over, roll up your flag, find your nearest official, walk out. Like there is no like, oh,
That
you can
was,
sit around and chat. It's like get to the locker room. Like
yeah,
no matter how well that match went, get to the locker room.
that was really interesting when that was taught to me, like that was one of the bigger surprises at the Division 1 level for the being a line judge. Like, it's like, hey, get it and go. And you're making plans already on who's going to grab whose stuff and get to the
Yep.
locker room before you even finish the match. And actually it's done in between sets, like who's going to grab what.
Yep.
You know, it's not a lot of prep on it, but it's just
No,
enough. Like
it's
who's
not.
grabbing what, and let's go when it's over. But that was interesting to me, and I guess that makes sense. Like I sort of understand. Like you know, get out of the way. You know, let everyone sort of figure out how they feel about the match and go home, and then you also have time after the match to really discuss how it went and all that
Yeah.
fun stuff and go over things. But yeah, all right, cool. So yeah, last question, man. Like
Sure.
what does the future hold for Ben Lynn? What are you looking to do coming up?
Well, I mean, obviously we've got the Rhode Island high school boys season coming up.
True.
I already told Simmons that I'd probably be available 3 to 4, and if needed, probably 5 days a week. So
Wow. All right.
those
So
are
you're
the
gonna be one of the guys.
other officials out there, and anyone who knows who I am will probably see me a lot, at least up in the northern half of Rhode Island.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm expecting to probably work the finals, and if I'm not, I'll be there just because I enjoy watching it. And I've gotten to a point in my career where it's like I've put in all this work as an official. I got to know how it ends.
Yeah.
Like it's like
Yeah.
it's like binge watching 10 seasons of a show and then just not watching the finale. It's like, how can you not just go and see what happens? Like,
Yeah, well, especially if you're going to be a 3 to 5 day grinder, you know, like I think what I'm going to be able to provide is maybe 2 days, you know, maybe three if I'm lucky, but two is probably about where I'm going to be during the season. So,
yep,
you know, if you're going to be a 3 to 5er, you know, you're going to see a lot of volleyball. You're going to see a lot of teams, and you're going to want to know, you know, how it's going to end. And certainly they're going to want to put as many, you know, seasoned referees on the championship matches, championship day anyway. So
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see that. What else going on in the future?
Future largely for me is I'll probably stick with South County. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and we'll take whatever assignment that we end up having to go to next year, depending on how many kids that we have. And then, in terms of college refereeing, I'll continue doing the women's season next season. I've been in contact with another assigner that I might be able to do the men's season the following
Oh,
season. So that'd
nice.
be the 2024 men's season.
Hmm.
Hopefully, I get some matches. If I do, great. If I don't, oh well. And hopefully, if I'm a little more established, either in my apartment now or my apartment in the future, or somehow a house or whatever, then I'll be able to kind of pursue higher level certifications and start to at least make some degree of more money. Because I mean, I've told plenty of people before I'm doing this largely to help pay for college because it helps that much. But
Yeah.
I hope no one takes that in the way of like, oh, he's just in it for the money. It's like, no, like I thoroughly enjoy it. The money is just a benefit. Like,
Right. I think you would still be an official even if you weren't making decent money doing it. And really the reason there's decent money in the officiating world is twofold. Number one, there's not a lot of officials out there. Like they're
yeah,
trying to
exactly.
entice people to get involved, to be more involved. Because but you know, at the same time, officiating's hard. Like
It
you have
is.
to
It's very hard.
deal with coaches that can be really pieces of work, and you have to deal with fans and parents that can be very pieces of work. So
I
um
mean, prior to the pandemic, I believe the stat was, at least up to 2019, I believe 80% of officials had quit across the country in all sports in their first 3 years of officiating because of parents. Now, that being said, I'm not trying to point fingers, but at the same time, it's like there's a quote in a gym somewhere. I don't remember which one it is, but the idea is coaches coach, players play, officials officiate, parents parent. That last part is very important, not only for the officials, but for the players and the coaches as well. Like, I'm well aware I'm not necessarily the person to be preaching that, but at the same time, it's like, look, if everyone stays in their lane, everyone will have a much better experience.
right, and that's one of the things that you know I've sort of with ResV I've started thinking about is maybe I can help educate a little bit. You know, if I can give the parents some more ideas on what it's supposed to look like, why it looks like this, you know, why the decisions are made the way they are, you know, maybe that can help a little bit. Um, because it's and it's tough too because there are great parents out there. There are fans and parents that
Absolutely.
are just outstanding, and then there's guys and gals that are just really really tough. And you know,
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
those 80% stats, that is as a result of a vocal minority.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I cannot tell you how many matches I've walked out of where parents have thanked me or questioned how I've been able to do it. Not necessarily that I am able to do it, but how I'm able to put up with a coach who yells at me or a kid who yells at me or what have you. And it's like, you just kind of develop thick skin. And if you stay around long enough, you probably have some sort of love for it.
And
So
you also get to see guys who've been successful. Like I'll never
absolutely.
forget where I was working with, we've talked about Rick a little bit. Rick Rowe is one of the top officials, in my opinion, that I've ever gotten to see. He used to referee some of our JWU matches, and then certainly he's been doing Division 1, Division 2, Division 3 matches. He does high school. I mean, he's one of the better guys out there. And I was doing a match with him where one of the players was really getting ornery, and he was, he was during the boys season, and he was really just all fired up. And I got to see how Rick handled that situation, and that was huge, because then I
Yeah.
understood what I would need to do if that situation occurred, because I really didn't have any. I mean, one of the things I
Yeah.
lean on way too much in my career is that I'm big and I'm scary looking. So, so not not a lot
I
of
have
people
not
give
had
me a
that
hard time.
ability.
But
I
yeah,
have
I
not had
mean,
that ability. I am short and soft. Like,
but big and scary, so I get to, I'm sure I get some leeway. Like, no one wants to really dance with me and give me a hard time. Um, there have been, don't get me wrong. I've had plenty of people challenge me on a lot of things, but I do lean into that pretty good. But there, I hadn't had that moment where, like, what do I do? And this kid, do we want to toss him? No, probably not. But we do got to curb the behavior. We got to make sure that he understands that this is not going to be acceptable for the rest of the match. And that's a lesson. So that's one of the things that happens. You start seeing the guys who have been very, very good at it, and you learn how that works, and then that's going to allow you, along with thicker skin, along with more experience, to survive those moments, and be good at them, and not be a jerk. Because one of the things you don't want to do, in my opinion, is overreact. You don't want to be like, all
no,
right, you're
absolutely
gone,
not.
kid, you're out of here. You don't know what that kid's story is and what he's going through or she's going through. You don't want to be so overreacting to the point where people, when you walk in the gym, people are like, oh God, this guy, oh God, this girl, this woman. Like, you don't want to be in that world. You want to be,
Yeah,
all right, I'm gonna get a fair match. And that's my goal, is to give you a fair match. Like, when I walk
absolutely.
in the gym, you don't gotta love me. I just don't want you to hate me.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, I don't want to
I
walk in
I,
and
I
take the
walk
breath out of the gym.
I walk out of every gym hoping that no one knows my name,
Yeah,
minus the parents and kids who might actually know me. But
yeah,
if I walk out of a gym and you don't know what my name is, I've done a good job.
yep,
If I walk
yep,
out of a gym and you don't remember me the next time I walk in, I've done a good job.
yep,
Like,
yep. I
the
think
best officials you had are the ones that you don't remember exist.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right there, Ben. That's the best way to describe it. So awesome. Well, Ben, thank you so much for being on the first interview for ResV Systems, and I hope it wasn't too much of a problem for you. Seemed like you had some
Not
decent
at
fun.
all. This is just one of our conversations. We just happen to be doing it on Zoom this time.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, you and I talk quite a bit, and you were right. I mean, certainly I test almost everything off of you, because number one, you're a great sport, and number two, it's always fun talking with you. Super intelligent conversation all the time, and
Appreciate it.
and whether or not, you've helped shape a lot of what I do, in my post Johnson and Wales career, because whenever I think, uh whatever I think I have an idea, the first thing I do is call you and say, all right, what do you think about this? And you'll tell me if it's dumb or not. And it's like, all right, Ben thinks it's okay. We're running forward with this. So, all right,
The
buddy.
only thing
Thank
you
you.
didn't do that with me before was ResV, and here we are.
Well, ResV, the beginnings of ResV was, I was in a place where I was working, and I wasn't happy. I was bored. I love the people that were there. Like, it was great. Like, the people that I got to work with were outstanding, but the job wasn't for me. And I was
Yeah.
still sort of pining for the volleyball world that I sort of created a niche in, and I really wanted to be back in there. So I was going to create this ResV thing. And then immediately after I created ResV, I got hired by NCSA, and so ResV just got put on the back burner because there's not enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
And now that, and again, NCSA, another situation where people I worked with was outstanding. I really enjoyed the people I worked with, but I need to step away for some other reasons. And now that I have a little more time on my hands, like, all right, let's really give this ResV thing some love. And it's actually turning in a direction that I didn't think it was going to turn in. I thought initially it would be exactly. I thought initially it would be like, hey, I'll go to gyms and I'll help coaches, and I'll help them, because a lot of teams that I would see through refereeing, I would be like, oh, I can help them. There's only one thing that needs to be fixed. And once you have it, you're going to be very competitive. Sign me up, let me help you. And now it's going to be more about, content and, videos and certainly the idea of maybe meeting with parents, with players, maybe even coaches that are interested, in sort of one-on-one meetings to help out with, but more the content and the videos. I think that's going to be where it's going to go for me. And, hopefully that it's worth a membership here or there. And then hopefully, we continue to do the events. Cause I think the events, everyone sort of likes the events. The ResV
Yeah,
All-Star game is really
absolutely.
popular.
I think a
So
lot of people had fun last year. I'm excited for this year.
yeah.
I know Simmons and I have got some stuff planned to maybe surprise you a little bit, have a little bit more fun with it this year. So should be fun. Should be a really good time.
Yeah, and this will be the first year that we'll have sponsors involved. I've already reached out to a couple people, and they're very interested. And I think running a camp or two will be really within reason as well. And certainly if I could make it my full time job, that would be sweet. But even if it doesn't happen, which is perfectly fine, if I can be if the ResV thing can be sort of a service that can help people, understand how the game works, understand what the coaches go through, what the players go through. If I can help coaches and players get better at their job, I think there's possibility there.
Yeah,
But again, it's going
absolutely.
to turn out to be a different venue and different idea than what it initially started, where I was going to go from gym to gym and help coaches do their thing. There really hasn't been a need for that or an interest, and that's perfectly fine. But I can make videos and I can make them corny, and I I can interview people that I think are cool, and that might be worth people signing up as a membership base, and maybe from there we can have more events, and that's sort of the goal. So we'll see how it goes. But dude, thank you
Yeah,
so much for being on.
of
Really
course,
appreciate
Rez.
it. Always looking forward to talking with you. And yeah, check out resvsystems.com. That's where you can find all this stuff, and certainly with the season starting in a couple weeks, the weekly write-ups are going to get going, and I know Ben's going to be telling me all about who's playing where and who looks good and who doesn't. That's one of the ways I make it work is guys like Ben Lind, who are just wonderful guys to work with. So thank you so much, Ben. Stay well, man.
You're welcome, Rez. Talk to you later.